is going on. Y'all can let me know if the YouTube is playing. Anyone sees this on YouTube. You see it on YouTube? Comrade Malakia? Okay, Ophelia sees it. Okay, thanks, Ophelia. Alright, let's begin. I think I'm sharing the screen. I'm sharing the screen, Comrade Malakia.
Yes, you're sharing.
Alright, thanks, Comrade Dan. This is our flyer that we shared, inviting people to the conference. Guaranteed reparations. Reparations is a right that you don't have to ask for or demand. Some people try to sound tough and say, we demand reparations. It's the same as being on your knees, whether you demand or you're asking, you're on your knees. But it says reparations is a right that you don't have to ask for or demand. It is a decision and action of the people, not the government. Learn what we must collectively do if we want reparations. And we're going to show you how reparations is in the hands of the victims. It's not in the hands of the government to give. It's in our hands. The government has already acknowledged that they violated. They've already acknowledged that we'll do reparations. Are we going to wait for them to give it, or are we going to exercise our right or assert our right to reparations? First, we have to know what reparations is. Just want to share that flyer to show you the direction of this call. But as I often do, I'm going to preface this call with some of the words of Dr. King. Am I still sharing the screen, Comrade Dan?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is Dr. King. Dr. King had a meeting in 1967 in Frogmore, South Carolina. It's a strategy meeting. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a march. It was just a meeting with his organization, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. A strategy meeting. He had came to the conclusion that after 12 years of so-called civil rights struggle, that they had netted no tangible results or change in the condition of black people. So they had to do something different. So they had this strategy meeting, and here's some of the transcript. This is not the whole transcript of the meeting, but this is some of the transcript of King's words during the meeting. Some of the key words. He said, we have moved from the era of civil rights to the era of human rights. Now, if we are to recognize that we are in this new era, where the struggle is for genuine equality, we must recognize that we can't solve our problems until there is a radical redistribution of economic and political power. There again, we must not be fooled about this. We must recognize that if we are to gain our God-given rights now, principalities and powers must be confronted and they must be changed. Now, when we see that there must be a radical redistribution of economic and political power, then we see that for the last 12 years, we have been in a reform movement. We were seeking to reform certain conditions in the house of our nation because the nation wasn't living up to the very rules of the house that it has prescribed in the Constitution. Then, after Selma and the Voting Rights Bill, we moved into a new era, which must be an era of revolution. I think we must see the great distinction between a reform movement and a revolutionary movement. See, reform, you're trying to make the nation better. I'm trying to make them do right. Dr. King said after 12 years of marching with hundreds of thousands of people, boycotting, etc., a voting rights bill even enacted, we still haven't gotten anywhere trying to reform America to do right by black people. So he said after all of that, we've moved into a new era which must be an era of revolution. Then he said, I think we must see the great distinction That's where we are now as a people, and that we will address on this call, because you got to draw a line in the sand. You got to make a distinction between a reform movement and a revolutionary movement. A reform movement can't get us reparations. They can't. It's impossible. Because they depending on the violator to stop violating. A revolutionary movement does whatever's necessary, which is in accordance with the law, to make sure that they have reparations. This call is a revolutionary call. King was getting ready to make a revolutionary move in some months after this meeting that he had. It's called the Poor People's Campaign. He was going to go and actually occupy Washington, D.C. Many of you have seen some videos of interviews King gave before this Poor People's Campaign. We said they got to cut that check. He said they were going to Washington, D.C. They're going to occupy the place. They're going to cause civil disobedience, nonviolent revolution in the nation's capital until they cut that check. A check that's large enough to put black people on their feet to go for self. This is some of, you find on Wikipedia some words about the Poor People's Campaign. But listen to this, if you look at it. I want to read a few things from here. So you can't say that I'm making up. I made up those words myself. King was a civil rights leader, not a human rights leader. King was trying to reform. He wasn't talking about no revolution. The Poor People's Campaign, I'm reading this Wikipedia. The Poor People's Campaign, because we got to see what King was getting ready to do. He was one of our, probably the most mobilizing leader that we have had in history. Mobilizing with a purpose now. He's talking about mobilizing just to give a speech to millions of people now. Talking about mobilizing people to get something done. King was the most prolific at that. The Poor People's Campaign had complex origins. King considered bringing poor people to the nation's capital since at least October 1966, when welfare rights activists held a one-day march on the mall. In May 1967, during a SCLC retreat in Frogmore, South Carolina, King told his aides that the SCLC would have to raise nonviolence to a new level to pressure Congress into passing an economic bill of rights for the nation's poor. Skip to the last sentence in this paragraph. In his concluding address to the conference, King announced a shift from reform to revolution and stated, "We have moved from the era of civil rights to an era of human rights." You're going to learn during this call why human rights instead of civil rights. I'm going to read a few more things. Bear with me. I lost my place in this. Well, I was trying to read, but let me see if I can find it. Bear with me for a second. Bear with me. Excuse me. Trying to read this part in here that I lost my place. But when it spoke about how King's fellow members of the campaign, his fellow members of his organization, they didn't agree with King in being civilly disobedient. They didn't agree with King wanting to start a revolution. That was Andrew Young, Jesse Jackson, John Lewis, and all of them. They didn't really agree with King. So when King was assassinated before the march took place, of course, his followers abandoned what the actions that he intended. Here it goes right here. It says, not all members of the SCLC agreed with the idea of occupying Washington. Bayard Rustin opposed civil disobedience. Other members of the group, like Jesse Jackson, wanted to pursue other priorities. Dissent continued throughout the planning of the campaign, and as we see, when King was assassinated, they didn't go to Washington, D.C. and occupy D.C. and cause civil disobedience till a check was cut. They sat down with the murderers of King, which is the government. They sat down with the murderers and put on a show. Said, okay, you're going to do what King said. Y'all going to have a little resurrection city. Y'all going to stay there for this amount of time, then y'all going to just leave town. And that's exactly what they did. No civil disobedience, no occupying D.C. till a check was cut. And that was King's move for reparations, for the economic reparations that many talk about. After King was assassinated, no bold move has been proposed since, until now. We have various reparations groups, and I salute the different reparations groups that we have. But they've been in existence for a long time and have gotten nowhere. See, at least King, after 12 years, Dr. King decided to have a meeting and say, hey, we got to abandon those tactics. We ain't getting nothing from that, what we have been doing. And he did more than anybody did. But he was humble enough to say, look, 12 years is long enough, man. We got reparations movements that have been in the game for over 60 years. All they doing is, they went from asking, now saying we demanding. We done got strong, now we demanding instead of asking. You're still asking, and you still ain't gonna get nothing. Let me read this. This is an article written from, I downloaded this from the university's website. Look, New York Law School. New York Law School Journal of Human Rights. It says reparations for new Africans in America, written by Chokwe Lumumba. Chokwe Lumumba was one of the earlier leaders of the Republic of New Africa. He also was a human rights attorney. That's why his publications are in law schools. Listen, he said new Africans in America have continuously demanded reparations from the United States government or other American institutions since the end of the Civil War in 1865. Listen. Currently numerous, then he goes over a list of different people from 72 to 1800s, early 1900s. Then he says currently numerous political formations and individuals are organizing people around a call for reparations. I'll read some of his words now. The political essence of slavery is not merely found in economic exploitation of labor, but in the illegal imposition of United States jurisdiction over the slave or slave's descendants. Full reparation must relieve any imposed political status. That sounds kind of lawyery, if that's a word. But let me break it down in layman's terms. Let me read it again and I'm going to explain it. He said the political essence of slavery is not merely found in economic exploitation of labor. They didn't just enslave us and make us work for free. But they illegally imposed the status on us of being free people governing themselves to being a subject people in somebody else's system. That's why he says full reparation must relieve any imposed political status. See, he's saying this because we're getting the meaning of reparations wrong. We think reparation is them cutting a check because of labor. Yeah, cut a check because of the labor, but also what about the imposed political status? How many people on this call's ancestors agreed to be minority citizens of a white democracy? Raise your hand. None of them. They forced us under political status of being subjects to their system. Then they so-called let us free from being slaves and subjects to still being slaves and subjects because we are minorities in a democracy that's majority white. So full reparation must relieve any imposed political status. This is a human rights lawyer talking. Where is he getting this from? Let me read something. Reparations. This is from the United Nations website. Victims have a right to reparation. This refers to measures to redress violations of human rights by providing a range of material and symbolic benefits to victims or their families, as well as affected communities. Reparation must be adequate. Now listen to this sentence. Reparation must be adequate, effective, prompt, and should be proportional to the gravity of the violations and the harm suffered. You see that? Adequate, effective, prompt. What does prompt mean, Comrade Dan? Can you give us a definition of prompt in layman's terms?
Layman's term prompt means right now, right away, immediately.
Right now. So if reparations should be prompt, what we doing in a reparation struggle, talking about reparations, John Conyers himself went year after year for 40 years to Congress asking them just to study reparations. We had movements, as Brother Chuck Whaley Lumumba pointed out, since 1865 asking for reparations. We had political movements since the 60s talking about reparations. Some of them same movements are here today. Some of them was even participating in a conference that was last weekend about reparations. If it hasn't been prompt, that means something is wrong with our call for reparations. First of all, we got to understand. Everybody write this document down right here. Download it so you can understand reparations. This is called the Basic Principles and Guidelines on the Right to a Remedy and Reparation for Victims of Gross Violations of International Human Rights Law and Serious Violations of International Humanitarian Law. Basic Principles and Guidelines so you can know what reparations is. You can have a guide, okay, this is what reparations is, this is what reparations is not. If you don't have a guideline, then somebody can fool you because you don't have a guideline. You don't know the principles of reparation. They can cut you a check and you still be a victim and slave in their system and you think you've been repaired. We just read to you what reparations meant. Let me skip down. Bear with me. We're going to learn what reparations is today and what we have to do in order to get reparations. And learn what we have been doing wrong. That's why we haven't gotten reparations. Adequate, effective, and prompt reparation is intended to promote justice by redressing gross violations of international law, human rights law, or serious violations of international humanitarian law. Reparations should be proportional to the gravity of the violation and harm suffered. That's why the earlier callers for reparations, black people in the 1800s, they said, no, we want 40 acres and a mule. We want our own land and our own control. It wasn't a check under the former slave master's government. That wasn't reparation. They said, no, repair us. Give us some land that we could control like we were before you captured us, conquered us, and enslaved us. That's our repair. First part of reparations, as in this guideline says, restitution. Whenever possible, restitution should, whenever possible, restore the victim to the original situation. The original situation. Did we have U.S. dollars in our original situation, Comrade Dan?
Repeat that, sir.
Did we have U.S. dollars in our original situation before they captured and enslaved us?
Did we have U.S. dollars? No, sir.
No,
we didn't have U.S. dollars.
So U.S. dollars ain't got nothing to do with restoring us back.
Exactly.
He says, whenever possible, restore the victim to the original situation before the gross violations of international human rights law or serious violations of international humanitarian law occurred. Listen, restitution includes, as appropriate, restoration of liberty. Give us our freedom back. I ain't talking about liberty under your system of constraint, your white democracy. That's not liberty. You can't take me from somewhere, lock me up, then say, oh, well, okay, I'm going to let you out, but you still inside of my government, inside of my territory, but you liberated. You're not liberated. Enjoyment of human rights, identity, family life, and citizenship return to one's place of residence. My God. Now are you all seeing what reparations really is? And reparations is a right. It's a right. If you're looking at your screen, I'm sharing something called the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Covenant means a contract. It's an international contract that many governments, including the United States, signed this contract. Contract means it's enforceable. It's enforceable. Listen. First of all, it says, number one, all peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Like Attorney Chokwe Lumumba was saying, reparations includes, the main part of reparations, returning to us our political status. Meaning we're independent, we're free, we control our own territory, which is called the right of self-determination. So the first part of being repaired is becoming self-determining again. Also inside this document, it mentions a right to a remedy. Here it is. To ensure that any persons claiming such a remedy, hold on, bear with me, I went too far down. To ensure that any persons whose rights or freedoms as herein recognized are violated shall have an effective remedy, notwithstanding that the violation has been committed by persons acting in an official capacity. So even if you're a government, if you violated some human rights, you got to pay up. You got to repair. You got to give them a remedy. If you don't give a remedy, then you are violating the law and somebody can enforce this contract against you. Bear with me, bear with me. This is called the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Very powerful. We're talking about how we're going to guarantee reparations is guaranteed. Reparations is not guaranteed if you're waiting for somebody else to give it to you, your enemy. Especially when you don't have to, when it's in your hands. Bear with me. I'm sharing a document now. Now, as we know, reparations is self-determination. There's no reparations without self-determination. You're not repaired until you back controlling yourself. This is a meeting, a conference, not more than a meeting, a conference at Hamlin University School of Law held on May the 14th, 1993. It's called Proceedings of the Conference on African Americans and the Right to Self-Determination. Bear with me. We're going to open up the floor in a minute for discussion. But I got to share these things. This was a whole bunch of doctors of law coming to this conference. You see some of the names there. See the name Keith Ellison. That's the Attorney General for Minnesota right now. He was at this conference. Why did they have this conference in 1993? Here are some of the words. Historically, it reads, the rights of African Americans in the United States have been discussed almost entirely in terms of United States constitutional law, U.S. civil rights, rather than in the broader international legal framework of human and collective rights. Now, it had no business in 1993 still being discussed in terms of civil rights when Dr. King said what he said in 1967. But his words never reached the public. He was murdered, and his comrades, John Lewis and all the rest of them, sold him out and backtracked. But we're going to go further. Hold on. It says, however, important recent developments and perspectives raise new questions. In September 1992, the United States ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights developed under the auspices of the United Nations. This covenant protects the right to self-determination. So when the United States ratified this covenant, that means they signed the contract saying it can be enforced in America. we have to abide by this. What do they have to abide by? Number one, the right of self-determination of peoples within the United States. White folks are exercising their right of self-determination. That's what the United States is. Indigenous people, they compromise and are limited in their assertion of their right with their, what they call them, reservations. Now, the only people left that haven't asserted their right of self-determination is black people. So when they signed this and ratified this, these groups of lawyers said, hold on, let's have a conference. They just ratified the international covenant. So as lawyers, we know contract law. We know how to enforce contracts. We know contracts are enforceable. We know you have to abide by contracts. So now they have to abide by self-determination. Let's have a discussion and try to develop a framework and encourage black leadership to develop a framework based on self-determination, because that's the only way that's guaranteed to get us out of the situation that we're in. Listen. The purpose of this presentation is to provide the perimeter and international framework from which can emerge a socio-politically meaningful and legally functional response. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to read that again. The purpose of this presentation, because it's the purpose of this presentation, actually, that we're on tonight, called this web conference, is to provide the perimeter and international framework which can emerge a socio-politically meaningful and legally functional response. Because our response that we have been doing ain't even legally functional. And it's definitely not meaningful because we're not getting anywhere. But based on the law, he said, look, we have a legal way that we can respond to this. Listen, at decisive points in the American past, events occurred that had the effect of arresting American social, political, and intellectual development. Arrested development. Subjecting it to an orbit governed by the strange attraction of historically enforced paradigms, such as, no matter what actual effect majority decisions may have on the African American, accepting these decisions represents not only what is best for the African Americans, but also the only possible way in which the U.S. democracy can be expressed or maintained. He's saying we're stuck thinking we have to rely on this white majority democracy, rely on its decisions to solve our problems. Well, how can a majority who have different interests than you, the minority, how can they solve your problem? How can they have the same interests? They're not going to have the same interests by nature. Listen, so why would you subject yourself to solving your problem with a problem solver that's by nature, by its very construct, anti-black? Listen, let me read a few words from this. Our attempt today to begin the process of reorienting intellectual thought around the right to self-determination is first of all an act toward intellectual liberation. We're trying to liberate some intellects. We got a lot of intellectual people. Heck, I see videos all the time. We sharing videos of who all these people be talking. Some very smart people like Riz Islam and others. Our attempt today to begin the process of reorienting intellectual thought. But if you look at their thoughts and all these videos coming at us, there's no solution, just an articulation of our problems. Because those people who we respect their intellect of dropping all this knowledge on us on these videos, they're not liberated because they don't know what to do. Besides just keep on kicking knowledge and putting a bunch of books on a slave's back. We got enough stuff on our back already, the responsibilities we got to carry under this system. I don't need no more books on my back. So now we're going to liberate ourselves and hopefully liberate those who we got kicking us knowledge. To let them know, look, there's something you can go beyond just kicking this knowledge. There's something we actually can do. We can stop being frustrated. It says, and is an historical landmark suggesting that we have finally broken free of the enslavement paradigms and can now begin to contribute positively and meaningfully to African American freedom. So now that we know that there's a way forward, I know our people, they got to be feeling intellectually trapped. Like, for instance, they just had a conference on reparations. Nothing came out of it besides an announcement of another conference next year. Not another action to get the reparations, but another conference to talk about reparations. So was that conference a meaningful contribution? If it didn't progress, you just have progress to another one. We got to start making this thing make sense, brothers and sisters. Let me go a little further. Am I still sharing the screen, Comrade Dan?
You're sharing.
We're getting to what we can do. All peoples have a right to self-determination. Henry J. Richardson III's Liberatory Perspective on Racial Justice. This is written by Natsu Taylor Saito. Now, I downloaded this off of Temple University Law School's website. Natsu Taylor Saito is a professor of law at Georgia State Law University. Her subtitle says this: notwithstanding oppression, subordinated peoples can have a jurisprudence on which they act without a dominating people or group's permission. That's what King said from civil rights to human rights. Civil rights, you asking for permission from the civil authority. When you're dealing with human rights, international jurisprudence, that's above local civil authority. It's your human right. So you can act based on that jurisprudence without their permission. Because they're not going to permit you to be civilly disobedient, because that's a civil violation. But dealing with international human rights, you can be civilly disobedient. You got to ask them for nothing. You ain't got to be obedient to them. If you're if you're responding to a violation, correcting a violation, bear with me, man. Just an Asian American professor of law trying to school black people into what to do. Bear with me. Listen to what she says. She says, are African Americans and other peoples of color in the United States engaging in or even considering decolonization? Are we moving toward genuine liberation rather than simply asking for superficial adjustments to the status quo? First of all, the reparations calls that we have been making as a people are just superficial adjustments to the status quo. Give us a check, so now we got a bigger bank account inside the same system. That's not liberation. That's not reparation. That's a superficial adjustment. Do we want to decolonize ourselves and run the show ourselves? Run our own government? That's real liberation. In other words, she says, will we take our right to self-determination seriously and act on it? Will we take it seriously and act on it? How do you act on the right of self-determination? So she quotes the law. This is how you act on self-determination. She said, and we're going to read what the U.S. government says about acting on our right of self-determination. She says, according to the 1970 Declaration of the Principles of International Law Concerning Friendly Relations and Cooperation Among States, quote, the establishment of a sovereign and independent state, meaning we can create our own independent sovereign state, which they mean nation, anywhere we are, no matter the size of the territories, as long as the people are in agreement. Comma, the free association or integration with the independent state, meaning we can integrate and become part of another nation if we want to. We can ask the people of Ghana, then, can we become part of y'all? So we'll be the united black people of Ghana in the United States, former United States territory, whatever we want to call ourselves. It says, or the emergence of any other political status freely determined by a people constitute modes of implementing the right of self-determination of that people. In other words, self-determination can take many forms, but they all involve empowerment rather than equal treatment at the hands of the state. Meaning we're moving with power. We ain't expecting them to treat us right when we have power to treat ourselves. Bear with me, bear with me. Going somewhere with this. Oh, I want to read the last part of this. Bear with me. Let me show you the last part of this document. The last page. I like what she says here. She says the question becomes, what will it take to sustain and grow movements capable of fundamental liberatory change. Again, the question becomes, what will it take to sustain and grow movements capable of fundamental liberatory? Now, we got movements that's capable of fundamental liberatory change. We got a lot of movements. We got one movement that could even call 2 million men alone to Washington, D.C., but still hasn't changed nothing fundamentally for black people. But what will it take? I mean, you got to mobilize behind a different framework and do something different with a different intention. We got all these groups asking for reparations decade after decade after decade after decade after decade. And hadn't got one coin. What will it take to progress that? As we move forward, we can learn much from what Professor Richardson has articulated about the inherent right and ability of African Americans and other peoples of color within the United States to be self-determining. Should we choose to move beyond demands for equitable treatment and frame our struggles in terms of decolonization and self-determination, he has laid the foundation for us. Professor Richardson does not presume to undertake that task for us, for by definition, one cannot dictate how others should exercise their right to self-determination. Rather, he identifies tools available in international law to aid us in that process. So we're showing tools of the law that says, look, you ain't got to wait for no permission. You ain't got to wait for nobody to give you reparations. You can go ahead and take your reparations because it's an act that you have. You have a right of self-determination. They can't say, oh, here, black people, you're self-determining. You have to stand up and say, look, I'm determining for myself as a collective. Can't nobody come and just make you self-determination. Assert your right of self-determination. Can't nobody come and make you breathe. You just breathe. Trying to make some sense out of the senseless stuff we've been doing. There's something, if you're looking at your screen, called the Declaration on the Right and Responsibility of Individuals, Groups, and Organs of Society to promote and protect universally recognized human rights and fundamental freedoms. Write that in the chat box, comment section, or whatever. You all need to download this document, especially you all who are concerned and want to be active in this process of finally getting justice and stop relying on somebody to give us justice. It says it all right here in the title. Declaration on the Right and Responsibility of Individuals, Groups, and Organs of Society to promote and protect universally recognized human rights and fundamental freedoms. Meaning, we got to right ourselves. If they're not going to give us reparations, we got a right to make sure we get our reparations with our own hands. Not only do we have a right, we have a responsibility to do it. You got a responsibility to your children. In international law, they define duty and responsibility. International law, duty is defined as a moral obligation. Then responsibility is defined as a moral obligation that's binding in law. You have a duty to your children. You have a moral obligation to your children. You also have a responsibility that's binding in law. So if you don't take care of your children, the law can come and take your children. So because we haven't answered our responsibility to our community, anybody can come and do whatever to our community. They can keep on victimizing us. Police can do whatever. Because we hadn't answered our responsibility to take over our community and govern it ourselves. So they passed this so that individuals, just you by yourself, if nobody on this call stand up, you stand up by yourself. You got a responsibility yourself to stand up and save your people. You got a responsibility yourself to make sure your people are repaired, they receive reparations. The responsibility is actually in law, they call it responsibility to protect. They say first duty is on the government. They says if the government fails or can't protect human rights, or the government is the violator of the human rights, then other governments, other states should come to defense of those who are violated. If other states don't come, then the violated people themselves, the victims themselves, have a right to do something. Yeah, they've been saying reparations at the United Nations. United Nations is not going to enforce it, so we have a right to enforce it ourselves. We have a responsibility to enforce it ourselves. How do you enforce it? We have we already defined what reparations is. First, reparations is having or asserting your right of self-determination. That's something we do. How do we do that? The lawyer just pointed out, create your own sovereign area, wherever you're at. Now the U.S. government even pointed out how we do it. We're going to close out in a minute. Let me read this right quick. Am I still sharing the screen, Conrad Malaki? Because it seems that everybody knows how to get results all over the planet besides black people. We're the only ones, as those lawyers at that conference at Hamline University said, we're the only ones turning in purposeless circles over and over again. We've been circling around the reparations issue. They circled around to having a conference last week. Then they announced another circle to have a conference again next year. Purposeless circles. This is a document. It's called U.S. Policy Toward National Self-Determination Movements. It's actually a hearing by a Senate committee that they had in 2016. It's a bunch of congressmen on the Senate committee. 2016 on self-determination. Let me read some words from the chairman, Senator or Congressman Rohrabacher, like a 30-year senator, congressman. He said, today we will discuss a topic that is dear to me, but quite often overlooked by too many experts. That is national self-determination and its impact on what is going on in the world today. Let me skip to the next paragraph. He says, as advocates of democratic government and human rights, we cannot help but have sympathy with the grievances of many of these self-determination movements. They are often based on legitimate complaints and aspire to change a political structure that they quite often had no voice in creating. How many people on this call ancestors had a voice in creating this political structure called the United States government? Unless you white, you shouldn't have no hands raised. I'm not looking, but I assume there's no hands raised. He further says we should not see us trampling them down and suppressing them as our solution to that type of dynamic that is being created in a self-determination movement. Border and other types of change, border change and the creation of new states, these are things that will result in this type of dynamic, the self-determination that we see popping up in various parts of the world. But what is wrong with new governments? What is wrong with new states? What is wrong with the changing of borders that have been created by monarchs back 2 centuries ago? And after all, our country is a product of the self-determination movement. Listen, let me close this out with his last words. Open up the floor in a few minutes. Listen to these. This is the same senator, the chairman of this Senate committee, Congressman Rohrabacher. Listen to his words. He's going to tell us how easy it is. He said, but I will say that if we permit people into our country and permit them here legally, they have rights just like we do. He's talking about the right of self-determination. That is why we have to control our borders. And if the majority of people in San Diego end up being people who would prefer that they live in Mexico, I'm sorry. They have a right to vote on it, and it is adios San Diego. That's as simple as it gets. Remember, we read the words from that professor of law from Georgia State University when she read the law concerning asserting the right of self-determination. She said you can create your own independent state or you can integrate with another country. So he's saying, look, if the people of San Diego, if they are majority Mexicans and a majority of them want to be part of Mexico, they can vote on that and become part of Mexico. So the same thing with black folks. Wherever we are, we want to be independent. It's as simple as a vote. Simple as a vote. And many of our organizations have been knowing this for decades, though they have not yet held a vote. This is part of the creed. If you look at your screen, from the Republic of New Africa, this creed was created in 1968 or made public in 1968. This creed says, I believe in the Malcolm X doctrine that we must organize upon this land and hold a plebiscite to tell the world by a vote that we are free in our land independent, and that after the vote we must stand ready to defend ourselves, establishing the nation beyond contradiction. Same thing the senator said. That must organize upon this land, hold the vote, ask the people, do they want to be independent? If the people say yes, then we say, look, we're independent. And be ready to defend that, because that's the law. Let me share this video for about 45 seconds or a minute.
In the town hall yesterday.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about the town hall.
Yeah, the town hall was and is the town hall on separation. Is the direct expression of the desire and will of the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan. The town halls on separation that are traveling across the country right now was the idea and expressed desire and indeed instruction from the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan. So our great sister, student minister Dr. Ava Muhammad, hearing that instruction, moved out on that instruction, and what the minister wants to do is begin prepping our people for the inevitable separation. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said he wanted to put a referendum before the people, give the people the opportunity to consider and vote on separation. And so the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan has determined that it's time now to move on that. So we are moving.
Could you all hear that, Comrade Malakia?
Loud and clear.
So I just showed you two organizations, two premier black organizations, the Republic of New Africa, that's who Tupac's parents were part of, and many others, and the Nation of Islam. Both of them say the same thing since the 60s at least. And that's the law. All you have to do is vote on it. If the people say yes, hey, then you're independent. That's the right of self-determination. That's what was actually ratified and made enforceable in 1992 by the United States government. But for some reason, nobody knows what the right of self-determination is. Nobody knows the real definition of reparations. Nobody. Besides us on this call, of course. And a few others. Legal professionals who are not in the movement. If you look at your screen, I'm going to close out with this document. Then we're going to open up the floor. I'm sharing a publication from a scholar out of Princeton University and Tel Aviv University called We the Peoples: The Strange Demise of Self-Determination. And in 34 pages he explains why the government is afraid of self-determination, different mechanisms that they use to make sure that the most oppressed people on the planet are not even talking about self-determination. It has been a demise of the discussion amongst our leadership, amongst our activist organizations. Everything besides self-determination, when self-determination is the only guaranteed solution. He even explains that scholarship of the oppressed will collude with government and replace the meaning of self-determination from a meaning of strength and empowerment to a meaning of containment. He reads this. He said, I further suggest that powerful state actors and persuasive academics have sought to tame self-determination as both principle and practice, retaining the term, but altering its meaning from a source of threat into a resource for containing it. So now you have self-determination during Kwanzaa, which is a term or definition to tame self-determination and keep us from actually asserting our right of self-determination. As many of us know, just a little short preview of history, you will learn that Maulana Karenga was an FBI agent, worked against the Black Panther Party. I think they even killed some Black Panther Party members. That's public knowledge. It's also public knowledge that he didn't believe in black people having their own nation. He said the white people should maintain control over us, but we should be at least allowed to wear dashikis and name ourselves. Because of his views, his own founding members of his organization left him because he was a sellout. And now he gives us the wrong definition of self-determination. So now you just satisfied with renaming yourself or from Toby and taking back the name Kunta Kinte, but you still on Master's Plantation. But that's not self-determination. It's a false definition of self-determination. Let me read this. At the twilight of World War I, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson enthroned the people's right of self-determination as a paramount principle of international legitimation and warned self-determination is not a mere phrase. It is an imperative principle of action which statesmen will henceforth ignore at their peril. Robert Lansing, Wilson's Secretary of State, acknowledged the power of self-determination but lamented the phrase is simply loaded with dynamite. What a calamity that the phrase was ever uttered. What misery it will cause. See, the president was promoting self-determination for the white Europeans. But his Secretary of State saw a little bit further than Europe. He saw that within America's borders are two populations that can assert their right of self-determination and cause calamity within their structured system of oppression called the United States government. And that's black people and indigenous people. So they had to immediately work on us and make sure that we don't think about asserting the right of self-determination. Any organization that spoke on the right of self-determination was sabotaged or crushed. To the day, even remnants of those organizations don't want to even think about the right of self-determination. They just want to exist in the same system that sabotaged their organization and assassinated some of their members. We're going to end it right there, brothers and sisters. Open up this floor. Sorry I talked for so long, but I want to bring it home, an understanding of what self-determination actually is and what it isn't. And give us some guidance from even legal professionals, from doctors of law, on what we can do, on how we can take matters in our own hands, and even guidance from the United States government itself that says it's as simple as black people having a vote, and if they vote yes to independence, they can take independent control. So is that something that they can give us, or something we got to do? They ain't gonna come and set us up a vote so we can be independent of them. We got to set it up ourselves. They can, but do you think they're gonna do that? Somebody steal for you, gonna set you up where you can get back what they stole. That's not gonna happen, brothers and sisters. So it's an action that we have to take. We can hold our own vote. Once we vote yes, then we take control. And if they try to forcibly deny that, then we can do what we have to do. And that's what we're proposing. We're proposing that you all sign up on reparations.app. That's your vote for independence. And like we said, reparations is bigger than money. That vote in that app is not just a monetary wallet, but it's a database of those who consent to independence, to assert their right of self-determination. Where black people live is worth over $15 trillion alone in real estate value. What if we took over where we live? The geographical value of a place like Detroit itself is worth over $70 trillion because of fresh water. So we got our reparations right there. So what are we waiting for? Somebody to hand us something, or we're going to be proactive like the founding fathers of America? They were proactive. They ain't wait for no bridges to give them no justice. They said, we declare independence. Oh, you don't agree with our independence? Then war then. So we got to take that same stance, brothers and sisters. It's a bold stance. A bold stance. We're going to open up this floor. First, Comrade Dan, give us a couple of guidelines right quick so we can make this peaceful and smooth.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to any new guests that might be on this conference. What we do on this conference is we tend always to be respectful to each other's comments or statements. So if you want to ask a question, you'll tap the screen, highlight your mic, ask the question, then go back on mute, If you have a comment, let your question be answered first, and then proceed with your comment. Only Comrade Ramsey is to answer any of the questions that's put before us. That's either in the chat or through voice. Also, we're not concerned with any fear, so there's nothing to fear. This is what our rights are. This is the contract that the United States signed. This is a contract that you should be willing to enforce for your children to make sure this is done, that it gets done. So with that being said, we'll keep this short. Do not leave this conference with a question in your head that you're going to say after it's over. I should have asked this, or I wonder this, I wonder that. Also, we have a hotline, 888-999-6530. But the most important thing you can do is go to reparations.app and register for your vote. That is your vote. Your vote is what matters. Thank you.
Thanks, Comrade Dan. I'm gonna unlock the mics. Hold on, let me unlock the mics first if you want to say something. Hold on. All right, the mics are unlocked. Go ahead, Queenie. The mics should be unlocked. Are they unlocked? Comrade Malak? No, I thought they did. You have a comment? Go ahead. Somebody said they want to say something.
They were unlocked.
Oh. Somebody said they would like to speak. Go ahead.
Well, she has a question in the chat as well. That's Queenie. She said she signed up for the app, but the email verification is not working.
Yeah.
And before that, she said, so do you need 20 million to do that?
Good question. First of all, about the verification, don't worry about the verification. You verified. We'll verify that manually. Our system has been attacked. I've spoken and had to meet with a cyber professional, so we're gonna shift that site so they can manage it professionally, because that, of course, is getting a lot of attention, the things we announce. So not every nation, but all the top nations, advanced nations, they have a cyber department, cyber warfare department. They try to claim that it's just a cyber defense department, but we all know that it's a cyber attack department as well. So they attacked, well, they've even proven it when they attacked Iran's energy facility, and others. So they even admitted that they did that. So they have a cyber department that they attack threats. And as we just read, at least since the early 1900s, the biggest threat to America is a self-determination movement, because it's the only thing that would threaten their territorial integrity, stolen territorial integrity. So we're under attack with that, but don't worry about the verification. You'll be verified, and we're going to handle that. We're going to shift the hosting of that and maintenance of that to some cyber professionals, or the security of that to some cyber security professionals. Okay, dealing with the 20 million. We want 20 million. 20 million will give a show that black people do want liberation. But it doesn't have to be 20 million. In Detroit, for instance, we are already liberated. We already declared our independence. We're just building the capacity to actually take control of Detroit, and that's part of the reason why I'm in Russia as we speak. Because we're going to take that city, and if they want some smoke, we're going to have to bring the smoke. That's just a fact. According to international law, if they forcibly deny you, you have a right to war. You have a right to have assistance from others. Others have a right to assist you in your actions against forcible denial. So in Detroit, the numbers are already there. But we're trying to mobilize as many people as possible before certain times come where you're going to have to be self-determining and have your own designated safety zones. Our areas should be self-determining and safe, because America is going to get struck by some bombs, etc. So we have to be in areas where we're designated or distinguished from being part of America. I read in a video that we posted some weeks ago that we should follow the example of Ukraine. In 1991, Ukraine said they're declaring independence for 3 reasons. It said, number one, they're declaring independence to escape the danger that the government's actions is putting them in. The Soviet Union government's action is putting them under danger. Where there's no government who's putting their citizens in more danger than the government of the United States. Look at the evil they have done and continue to do around the world. Killing innocent people, dropping bombs on schools, on churches and everything. We trying to get Obama was doing it himself. Killed them school children, talking about, oh, it's collateral damage. When Trump got in there, he blew up that very popular Iranian general. He was in Iraq, in somebody else's country. You gonna strike him in somebody else's country? And everything that they do, what they did in Iraq, what they do all over the place, what they do in Palestine. And it's them, it's not the Israelis, it's the American government that's behind all of that. The power that enables that. Think the people ain't gonna strike America? You think God himself, you believe in a God, ain't gonna strike that damned nation called America? So we gotta be distinguished from that. So it's like Ukraine said, we separating ourselves and declaring independence because we don't want to face the danger that's coming to America. Not the danger that's coming, the danger that America has caused and the punishment that is coming. Then they said, number 2, we're continuing our 1,000-year tradition of state development. Meaning, look, we've been a free people. We're just continuing our tradition of being liberated. Well, before 400 years ago, we were liberated. We were free people. Not liberated, we were liberal people. We were free people. We were governing ourselves. Somebody disrupted that. We want to get back to that. I know we're domesticated as a people. We don't even think about ruling ourselves anymore. Because we don't know ruling ourselves. And number 3, they said we are basing this on our right of self-determination. So all those examples we should follow as a people and declare our independence. But yes, we need as many people as possible. But if not, as many people in whatever area, a majority in whatever area you may be in. Go ahead and speak. You raise your hand, go ahead and speak. Hit your microphone on your screen. If not, write it in the chat box. Any other questions, any comments? Any input?
Question in the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
Comrade Jenga.
Mm-hmm.
In the force for asserting self-determination in our country, state, local government, one can utilize self-determination without them using brutal force.
Without them, we're dealing with an enemy here. That's why I said we're in Russia right now, because they're gonna resist and oppose, try to forcibly deny that. So we got to have some strength. You don't get nothing without standing up, and there's definitely going to be some resistance. You got to be able to resist it back. If enough of us stand, then of course their resistance will be too small for the masses of people standing up. This is war, like Comrade Devin just said. We are at war. I ain't come to Russia because we're not at war. I came to Russia because we are at war. When you're at war, what you do, you seek allies if you're at war with a strong opponent. Especially an ally that's equally strong or maybe as stronger. It's not no game for us. Everybody else can be gaming you all and having conferences, etc. We're not playing no games here. Go on YouTube, see if there's anything as well, Comrade Malakia.
There's no questions.
Okay. I just saw a question pop up. Read that, Comrade Malakia. Let me see, try to find it.
Okay, one moment. Let me get to it.
I see it. Can you explain how the organization working with Russia is going to help us, and what agreements are you reaching with them? Can you explain how the organization working with Russia is going to help us? First of all, when you have an ally that can fight, that's the biggest help. The ally that can fight, that can back you. First, you got to show that you're willing to fight yourself. That's how it's going to help. We have somebody that can fight with us. Somebody that can be there, that's strong enough to even cause them not to want to fight. That to come to the table and say, look, we better let them before they create an open door, which we have created an open door for others to come in to assist them. So that's how working with Russia is going to help us. Same way America will work with others to topple African governments, South American, Asian governments, and elsewhere. Our alliances always help. What agreements are you reaching with them? I already announced one agreement. We're dealing with petroleum, for one, with their resources that we can use ourselves to create our own economic system and support our independence. But that's just a drop in the bucket. As I explained, where we live alone is worth over $15 trillion in real estate value. So me saying something about $300 billion in Russian and revenue from Russian petroleum is a drop in the bucket compared to the trillions of dollars in real estate value where we live. But that's some motivation for you all to stand up by mentioning that $300 billion, because we can't do anything unless we are self-determining people. It's illegal for subjects of America to even trade and transact with Russia. And there's other things we're discussing, but that's not for public information. You'll see it. If you're one that's standing, you'll see the results of that. You'll see it in action.
Do you see the other question?
How will the petroleum affect us financially? Like, what do we have to do to receive a part in this petroleum agreement? Please read that Reparations app website. For instance, when you sign up for Reparations app, it says $100,000 US dollar value. And it's not just petroleum. Like we said, the large part is taking over the assets of our city. Then you can leverage those assets. You can also use the money from petroleum transactions and create industry. For instance, we take $1 billion in petroleum sales and buy, I'm just making an example, buy $1 billion worth of, $1 billion worth of toilet tissue, which everybody uses. So now with that Reparations app, you can go to our warehouse and order some toilet tissue. But in other things, I'm just making that example. So now that app is useful. That money is useful. That digital currency just became valuable because it can purchase goods that we bought, then that we produce ourselves, utilizing the money from things such as the fuel transaction revenue. I hope you understand that. Any other questions, any comments? A lot of this stuff may be hard to understand because we're not used to being free. We're not used to transacting as a nation. We're not even used to doing real business as black people. The richest people amongst us produce absolutely nothing besides entertainment. While rich people around the world produce goods, they build houses, they produce machines. They make the shoes that these entertainers put their name on. Then they can drop the entertainer like a bad habit. He go from being worth $2 billion to being worth a few hundred million, a couple hundred million. So we don't even think on the level of producing something. Trading energy, refining energy resources. We don't think on that level. So it's hard to understand some of these things because we have been a domesticated people and everybody else has done these things for us. Or to us, rather.
So there's a question in YouTube.
What is it?
Sean, it says, how can I put my human energy to be a part of your organization?
That's a good question. We need all the human energy that we can get. You can sign up on, we're under attack. I hope the site is back up. humanrightspolicy.us. Also call the hotline 888-999-6530. So that's humanrightspolicy.us. And also call the hotline 888-999-6530. On that website, you'll see a form you can fill out to become a human rights policy officer. But also definitely please call the hotline. I see another question over there. I kind of understand it, but if we do not add anything, I do not understand how we will reap the benefit. Are you saying that the Self-Independence Act provides us automatically $100,000? If we don't add anything, you mean, what do you mean add anything? Add anything to the reparations wallet? I don't understand. Let me tell you, let me make an example for you all on here. Everybody on this call, I got some paper right here in front of me. It's blank paper, just white paper. But I'm going to tear it up into a whole bunch of pieces. I'm going to give everybody on here 100 each of these little pieces of paper that I've done tore up. They ain't even the uniform shape, just all kinds of shapes. But I'm giving you all 100 each. Now, confetti, Comrade Devin said, yeah, I'm giving you all pieces of confetti. So, now all of a sudden, I say, or for instance, the example I made earlier, I did a transaction with the petroleum, and I bought, like I said, toilet tissue. And I got a pile of toilet tissue right here, and said, look, you all, I'm selling this toilet tissue for $1 each package. So now that those pieces of paper just became valuable. Now we produce some food with that money, or we buy some food or whatever. And we say, look, you all can use that money on that wallet. Just transfer me some of or these pieces of paper. Just you can make like that's also the money on that wallet. Transfer me that money or give me these pieces of paper. You can have some of this food. Also, I can cut hair. I'll cut your hair for 20 of these pieces of paper. Now it just became valuable. You don't have to add nothing to it. We just created money, gave money value out of thin air because it can purchase something that we produced or even bought through our production and revenue earned from trading. I hope you understand that. I don't know if that's clear enough. Nations do it all the time. That's why they have money. They have production inside of their country that money is used for. Part of the scheme that made their fiat currency, European fiat currency, valuable in the first place is that the Rothschilds colluded with the government and told the government to require people pay taxes in their useless money. So it became not useless anymore. It became valuable because at least you need it to pay taxes. So it gave it value. And now that you know that it pays taxes, then the people started trading their human capital, meaning their skills, for it. But it was made out of thin air and given value that way. Where's the 100,000 coming from? The 100,000 is there. It's digital. We just gave you $100,000. Let me try to make it clear. We created 100,000 digital currency for everybody that signed up on Reparations app. All right. Now, when you take over your city, we take over our territory. That's trillions of dollars of value. We leverage that value and say, look, based on this $600 billion of real estate in Detroit, for instance, we're gonna get a loan or a loan for $1 billion, not leveraging the whole amount, just $1 billion of it. With that $1 billion, we create some industries that create spoons. I'm gonna make something simple. Spoons and other things. So now that we just created that, based on our self-determination, our power over the territory and over the resources of that territory that we leveraged, we created some products. And now with that money on that wallet, you can buy the products. Just like I said earlier, I gave an example of tearing up some pieces of paper, giving everybody 100 pieces of paper. And then I said, look, here goes some products you can buy with that piece of paper. So the $100,000 is coming out of thin air. We're giving it because we created it, but we're giving it value because it can buy and purchase something that we produced. Is that clear? Yeah, under the digital currency. Yes, she said she got it now. Yeah. Any other questions? Good questions, though. If you don't understand, we'll make it clear, because some of I might not be explaining it properly or might be confusing with my articulation of it. So make sure you ask questions. Those are good questions. Just help me to be clear. So don't be sorry you're not understanding. There's probably others that don't understand either, but they're not, what can I say, smart as you to ask, Queenie. Any other questions? Any comments? Anything on the live on Facebook? Not Facebook, on YouTube, Comrade Malakia?
No, there's a comment though.
What the
Someone
comment
says,
said?
we on our own to taking what's ours.
I don't know how to interpret that. Yes, we're on our own. Any other questions? Any comments? Any input? Any critiques? You're free to speak before we close out this call, but we do appreciate everybody for participating. Please share this with others. Share this information with others. It is being recorded and streamed on my Facebook page. If you can, Malaki, share the link to my Facebook profile so they can go and see this video and share it with others so that we can understand what reparations is. We can't be fooled about reparations. See, a lot of different states are even talking about reparations now, at least talking about it. But it would be the wrong reparation. Wouldn't even be the real lawful legal meaning of reparations. Because they're not restoring us back to our original condition. They're giving us a check to stimulate their economy. So how's it helping us if it's stimulating their economy? It didn't create an economy for us. It just stimulated their economy. Heck, George Bush was smart enough to give them stimulus checks years ago, decades ago now. Because he knew it would stimulate the economy. He knew he was going to spend it right back into their economy. Go ahead, Queenie. Come right down. You want to say something?
Now, my mic opened on its own. I don't know why.
Okay. Jegna Bay, go ahead. Jegna Bay. Looks like his system disconnected. Does it look like that to you, Comrade Malakia? There it is. Go ahead, Jegna Bay. You back.
Thank you. How's everybody doing tonight?
You're fantastic, my brother.
Likewise. All right, so my question is, so I'm in Connecticut, and what my spirit is telling me is that, because I've been studying contract law, and I know everything is controlled by the banks. So establishing our self-determination, is it safe to say going to our capital, to the judicial office or the Capitol building, and getting the officers there and, establishing our self-determination there?
I don't understand. How are you going to establish it again?
Well, okay, so you said based upon our reparations and taking back our state, right? So taking back our state is enforcing our self-determination and, basically just, taking over the government, the government entities that control our country or the state that we reside or we domicile.
All right, good question. No, we don't have to take over.
Is that a right perspective?
Yeah, we don't have to take over. Is that it?
Now, I read it also in Article 9.
Mm-hmm.
The Article 9 talks about the finances. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. You went silent there. You said Article 9 talks about the finances. Comrade Jegna. Comrade Jegna, we can't hear you. Or is it just me can't hear?
No, I cannot hear him either.
Here.
Jegna Bay?
There's a question on on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Let me address that right quick first, Comrade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Comrade Jegna Bay. We don't self-determination is not in the hands of the state government. It's in the hands of the people to assert that right. So it's as simple as holding a vote in your community or whatever area you want to take under independent control. Have a vote. Create a ballot. Tell people to sign the ballot for independence. If they sign that ballot, then the majority, you can take that area. You can declare independent. But you have to have a leadership body, like whatever kind of government you want to produce. And they vote for independence, and that government is now in control of that independence and can unilaterally declare independence over that area. It's not dealing with any state law or state codes. Like we said, this is international human rights. It's nothing to do with local jurisprudence and jurisdiction. Matter of fact, those constructs are illegal in the first place, so we shouldn't go back to submitting to them. So this is simple, like the congressman said, just hold a vote. You have a right of self-determination. Hold a vote. Hold your own vote. And it's adios to their system. You don't go to their system to get free from the system. Queenie, we're going to get to you in a minute. Go ahead, Malaki, and read that question on YouTube.
Okay. So the question is, since so many African Americans don't want reparations, do you think there is a way to sell the reparations idea with Africans? How can we interact with Africans about using the 100,000 on the continent?
A good question.
And then there's another, but I'll let you address the first part.
A good question. If you go to door by door in your neighborhood, if you live in a black neighborhood, I'm sure most of us probably do, and ask the people, do they want, would they like to have free housing? Would they like to have $100,000 in the account that's a revolving account now, $100,000? Would they like to live tax free, etc.? They will say yes. Nobody will say they don't want reparations if you tell them that they could have them. So I don't know where that statement is coming from. It's just that a lot of them are not standing up for reparations. I wouldn't stand up neither if I saw everybody standing up decade after decade and getting nothing. But if they knew that they could take their reparations, just like everybody knew that they can loot them stores a couple years ago, they did that, didn't they? Yeah, they looted them stores. That's how they responded. And that was a great response. Better than the silly marching we've been doing over and over again. So the people knew they can take their reparations. Everybody would take their reparations. So I don't agree with that statement that people don't want. They just don't want to go about it the way our activists, so-called activists, have been going about it, asking and begging. They're like, man, I don't care about no reparations. But if you tell them they can actually have an account with a whole bunch of money that keeps getting replenished, they can have free housing, everybody would say yes. They can govern themselves, won't be no more repressive, oppressive, corrupt police, they would say yes. So it's up to you to spread that to them. And then we can utilize those reparations. As a collective, we can assert our right of self-determination and then utilize that leverage that we have to repair ourselves and compensate ourselves monetarily. So uniting with Africa, this is not an African situation. They deserve reparations too, but this is a situation for Afro descendants that have been captured and enslaved and have yet to be repaired back to being self-determining. What was the other part of the question, Comrade Malaki?
Okay. And then the same sister says, she asked because it's been historically so hard getting all our people on one accord and on code to believe they are owed it. I'm merely asking to build up the numbers needed, 20 million, to get this going.
Yeah. No, good intent. I understand, sister. The We can get that 20 million. If everybody knew, it's a matter of spreading the word, getting it out there. 20 million is a large number. Like I said, if you only have 10,000 people in your area, that's large enough to take control over. At the end of the day, when it comes down to what they may call in sports crunch time, then everybody's heading to places like Detroit. But for now, we're trying to rally the 20 million. If 20 million people knew what reparations is and knew that it was in their hands to give it to themselves, those 20 million people would easily sign up for reparations and vote for independence. They just have to know. And there's ways of helping to get this more attention. And we're working on that as we speak. But each one reach one. Go ahead, Queenie. You want to say something? Do we have a form of government? We have a council. A council. That's what we set up. If you go to our website, the Republic of Detroit, it's as simple as setting up a council in your area or whatever area. But our area is Detroit, that we have actually asserted our right and had a vote. Malaki just shared the link there, DetroitGov.us. JacksonGov.us as well. We're taking Jackson through the same process. There's something called the Montevideo Convention. Write that down in the chat box if you can, Malaki. The Montevideo Convention. That's the international law concerning creating an independent state. You need three things. You need a government is first, a governing body. You can create your own governing council or parliament or president and Congress or whatever form you want to of government you want. You create that. Now you have to have, of course, the territory that you're going to claim independent control over. Then you have to have a consenting population on that territory. And you get them to consent by holding a vote. Now, once you have all those three components, you can declare independent, and that is a de facto state, lawfully. Without those three things, it's not considered a state. Just like even those three things are needed to create new cities in the United States. They need whatever area that they're trying to create a new city in. Like, I remember part of Atlanta broke off and now it's called South Fulton or something like that. They needed the people of that area of Atlanta to vote on creating an independent city called South Fulton. And they created a governing body over that. And of course the territory was marked out as that part of Atlanta. So whether it be a state, a city, or whatever, you need those three components in order to establish something. The people have to consent to it on that territory. There's nothing that can stop them from creating that city, that state, that nation. That's the law. It's internationally, and the local law reflects that same those international procedures. Like where I'm from, there's a small little area in North Carolina in a city called Hamlet. Small little area of just some hundreds of black people. They did the same thing. They voted to create their own city, and popped up a small city with no more than 2,000 people even now. Probably not even that much. Called Dobbins Heights. It's as simple as that. And I was talking on the phone the other day to somebody in Oklahoma. There's a city there that has no more than 80 people. But those people have consented to having that city. Same thing we can do to have an independent nation, as the congressman at that hearing pointed out. Any other questions, any comments?
I do, comrade.
You go ahead.
All right. So before my mic went out, I didn't get to hear your response to my question. I don't even know if you were able to hear everything that I said.
I heard you saying you stopped at Article 9.
Okay, so yeah, Article 9, I read that it deals with, the finance.
Article 9 and what? What are you reading?
Self-determination. The U.S. policy towards national self-determination.
Oh, what does it say about finance?
Well, basically, hold on. Let me just go to, I don't want to read it off my head. I don't want to paraphrase it. I should have had it already ready, but. But basically, what my question was, enforcing the self-determination going to our state capital, because within contract law, this is all governed by the banks and their indentured trustees and regular trustees. But because we have already contracted and abandoned certain securities, and I see that using self-determination, we can gain back those abandoned securities. Is that proper in perspective?
And when we say self-determination, then all of those. Dan, your mic is open. All of those codes we don't have are irrelevant, null and void, so to speak. So you don't have to even think about being in that construct or under some of those codes and have to abide by codes and have to go through this channel and that channel within their codes in order to free yourself. When you say I'm independent, that means their whole system is finished. It's null and void. So you don't have to worry about any codes. It's as simple as saying I declare independence. I vote for independence. You don't have to worry about those codes, nothing in the state and the banking system. All of that is a construct within their system. So we're outside of that. Like Comrade Devin said, we must create our own economic system. Yeah, we have our own system, so we don't have to. We have our own banks, so to speak. Any other questions? Good question, though, Comrade Janet. Is that clear, Jagna?
That is very clear. I understand and understand. Thank you.
All right, my brother. Thank you. Good question. Good question. Intelligent people ask questions. With that being said, anything on YouTube before we close out, Comrade Malakia?
No questions on YouTube.
All right, everybody. We appreciate you all for participating. We hope that what we said, Comrade Dolores, I see you there. Salute. We appreciate everybody for participating. We hope that this resonated. We know it resonated with you. It can't help but resonate with you. You all on this call because you want justice. You want freedom. You want reparation. You want to be repaired. You're sick and tired of being sick and tired, as the elders used to say. We want something effective. We want to do something that's effective. We're tired of being part of movements and watching movements do their thing over and over again, and we still in the same condition. It has to be frustrating, man. I know it's frustrating to me when I was in these movements. Like, man, do I got to keep doing this over and over again? Felt like I was crazy. So we got that insanity ends here. The intellectual, as the lawyers said, those doctors of law said at the Hamlin University conference, that arrested development is done. We're going to develop. It's not arrested getting nowhere, because we're going to take a new course, a course that's guaranteed to yield results. And that only guaranteed course is asserting our right of self-determination. The true meaning of reparations is self-determination. And that's up to us to do. Nobody can do that for us. Joe Biden gave us reparations. He signed something called the New Atlantic Charter in 2021 that committed the government to the old Atlantic Charter, which says that they wish to see us restored. That's reparations. So Joe Biden signed the document saying he wished to see us repaired, wished to see us receive the real meaning of reparations. But is he going to be proactive in making us get reparations? No, it's something that we have to do. And that's by holding our own vote, standing up and declaring our independence, and repairing ourselves. So everybody go to reparations.app. Mobilize the people. Make them aware of what's going on. Because some things getting ready to hit the fan very soon in that country. And I'm not one to watch things hit the fan. I'm one to throw something to the fan. Revolution would not be televised. And don't misunderstand that. People say that in a way that the wrong context. It means that you're not going to sit and watch it on television. It means you're going to be active. You have to participate in it. So we're not going to sit here on the fence and watch things happen. We're going to make these things happen ourselves. We're not going to wait and watch and wait. We're going to make these things happen. How do you make them happen? You vote for your independence. You assert your right of self-determination. And you defend that right of self-determination. So everybody go to reparations.app. We have... You want to say something, Comrade Jegna?
Yes.
Go ahead.
All right. So I found what I was looking for. Now this is pertaining to the handbook. Am I clear to speak about our handbook?
Not on this, unless it's in the international law part. If it's some policies or something, we discussed that on the call, on our Human Rights Policy Officer's call. But if it's something from the laws that's there, the policy, the covenants, etc., you're free to read that. Is it from those covenants or declaration on duties and responsibility, rights and responsibility?
No. I mean, yeah, it is. Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah, well, go ahead and read it then.
Yeah. All right. So this is Article 9. It says in the exercise of human rights and fundamental freedoms, including the promotion and protection of human rights as referred to in the present declaration, everyone has the right, individually and in association with others, to benefit from the effective remedy and to protect it in the event of the violation of those rights. To this end, everyone whose rights of freedom and allegedly violated has the right, either in person or through legally authorized representation, to complain to and have that complaint promptly reviewed in a public hearing before an independent, impartial, and authorities established by law. That's why I asked you if going to the hospital of the state, you reside to the judicial authority and bringing ourselves to
that judicial authority is not independent. It is the violator. It's not an independent authority. It's a violator itself.
Right.
So you can't go to them.
Right.
But
Understood.
Yeah, but what it's saying is we have a right to do those things. We also have a right to go ahead and execute it ourselves. Independent judiciary, independent authorities and bodies at the United Nations level already passed judgment on the United States. They already, even the United States has passed judgment on itself. It even apologized and admitted that slavery was wrong. So we don't have to go to court to prove that they was wrong. They were wrong. So now it's up to us to go ahead and repair ourselves, and we know what repair looks like. So we can go ahead and do that ourselves. But of course we have a right to take those other routes, but we know those other routes will not be respected. If we go to court, they're not. United States don't even accept. They didn't even sign on to the International Criminal Court because they know they are criminals. So they said, "No, we ain't going to no court." So if a violator refuses to go to court, then the victims become the court. The judge, the jury, and the executioner. You have a good question.
Thank you.
Any others? And Brother Jackman bringing them tonight. Good going, Comrade Jackman. He's been studying. We all should be studying, constant studying, and getting an understanding of these things, because we are executing them. You should know and understand what we are executing. Know the right. The more you know, the more confident that you are. The more energetic you'll get, vigilant you'll get, the more you know. But thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being extraordinary people, because this is an extraordinary conversation. This is not the regular conversation on let's come together and just talk about reparations. No, this conversation is what we are going to do and doing to take our reparations, to repair ourselves. It's not a conversation we come in to see how we can get together and march and try to pressure the enemy to giving us something that's not in his hands in the first place. This is not that conversation. This is an extraordinary. Now, those are ordinary conversations. They have them all the time. Just had one to get ready to have it. They announced another one next year. You're probably going to have some in between other organizations. Ordinary conversations. Ordinary conversations that produce ordinary actions that produce the ordinary result, which is nothing. We ain't going that route. We're not going that route. This is an extraordinary conversation. We are engaged in extraordinary action. And the laws of cause and effect dictate that if you engage in an extraordinary action, you're going to get an extraordinary result. And that result is reparations. So thank you all for participating. Let's move forward and take this to the victory circle. Love you all. Everybody have a peaceful night. Salute.
Salute, comrades.
Salute, comrades.